Excellent. I can see our attendees joining now. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this SOS Media and Amberjack webinar on the brutal truth. We want to share a live youth panel on diversity in early careers. If you give us just a moment, we've still got lots of employers that are pouring in order to come and hear from our fantastic panel. So we will get started in about 92 seconds. That's all I'm going to go for. So stand by and we will get started shortly. Thank you so much for joining us on this lunchtime. I am Cailean Carvalho. If you haven't met me before, I will be guiding you through today. We've got some amazing brand new market research insights that we'll be launching, as well as our fantastic panel. And you guys will have a voice throughout in order to make sure that you can share your thoughts on what inclusion looks like in your early careers companies. I'm gonna get started. I feel like it's about right. So, hey everyone, welcome to the Brutal Truth live webinar panel in coordination with Amberjack. SOS Media are launching today a live panel on diversity in early careers. I'm really excited to get your thoughts on this really important topic. I'm Cailean Carvalho. I'm the Executive Director of SOS Media and your host for today's session. So I would love all of our participants to join me. So grab your mobile phone and give a little scan of the QR code that's on screen. Panelists, you don't need to do that. This is just for our attendees. But if you're an employee that's joining us, give a little scan of that QR code on screen and come join me in Menti. This is our interactive software. So although you represent companies all over the UK, we want to get your voice together in really understanding your thoughts on some of these really key issues. This is also going to be your ticket to providing questions to our panel in real time to make sure you can get those delicious insights that help us make real difference to social mobility. So if you just give a little scan of the QR code from your mobile phone, or if you're struggling with that, pop a new tab open to www.menti.com and pop in those 8 digits, 46803577, and you'll be able to join us in real time. Now, if you drop out for any reason or have any trouble, well, I'll leave that little strip across the top here with the instructions so you can always dive back in. But in the spirit of making sure that I can get your thoughts, again, our live webinar is absolutely there for you. So you can submit your questions at any time. So just click on the Q&A on your telephone keypad. You're able to submit questions. I'll pick those up in real time and make sure we get them from our panel. So let's start off and getting your voice. I want to get your voice on discrimination in early careers. So on a scale of 1 to 10, between strongly disagree, strongly agree, give me your 3 thoughts on, do you feel you discriminate against young people when you're hiring? Whether that's explicit or implicit bias. Do you feel your organization has discriminated against young people when they hire more wider? And again, lastly, do you feel your organization discriminates against employees in the workplace? So these are all confidential, totally anonymous results. I just want to get a little bit of a picture from our audience to work out where we think we're starting with some of these key topics before we really take them into our youth panel to get their thoughts, of course. So that's a couple of you so far. If you're struggling to get in, just www.menti.com, use the code 46803577, and I want to make sure we can get your voice. Okay, that's quite a few of you. And look, there's a really interesting storyline kind of coming out from these early results. Thank you for sharing those. So we can see that we're quite very much strongly disagreeing on the individual discrimination against young people when hiring, either explicit or implicit, maybe a little bit more within the wider company, but still very much on the disagree side of the line. And then again, discrimination for those that are in the workplace also looks really low here. Thank you so much for giving me your thoughts on that. Cool. We will check in a little bit later on how you feel on some of those. For now, I want to move over and talk to our youth panel. So again, utilize your telephone keypads. If you click on the Q&A, you can ask me a question at absolutely any time, and I'll be able to weave that in. For now, I want to introduce you to 5 absolutely awesome teams from across the UK that are providing their voice to our thoughts on discrimination. So guys, I would love you to give me your name, your age, your location, and what your career aspiration is. Let's get started with Orpa. Go ahead, Orpa.
Hi, my name's Orpa. I'm 17 and I'm in London. My career aspiration is to work in technology, specifically either data analysis or fintech.
Excellent. And it's an apprenticeship that you're seeking, right?
Yes, I am currently looking at apprenticeships.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Orpa. Ewan, can I come over to you, please? Give us your intro.
Hi everyone, I'm Ewan. I'm 17 and I live in the northwest of England, specifically Cumbria. I'm looking to study business and marketing, whether that's at a university or doing a degree apprenticeship.
That's excellent, Ewan. Thank you so much. Chisholm, let's have your intro, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Chisholm. I'm from London and I'm 17. I'm looking into going to like medical technology. Yeah.
I love that. And is that a university route or an apprenticeship route?
I've been looking at university and degree apprenticeships.
I see you, Chisholm. We're on it. Thank you for that. Javier, tell us your intro.
Hi, I'm Javier and I'm 17. I'm from Walsall, which is near Birmingham, and I'm looking to get into accounting.
And what's your route to accounting?
Apprenticeship.
Good. All right. Excellent. Thank you, Javier. And Zoya, let's have your intro.
I'm Zoya and I'm looking to go into economics for a degree apprenticeship.
I love that. All right. Thank you so much. Sorry, you didn't say where you were from or your age. Where's your location?
Oh, sorry, it kicked me out just now, so I just joined. But I'm from the northwest and I'm 17.
That's perfect. Everyone, this is our amazing panel that have come together to help us address this issue of discrimination. So we've got some market research that I'm going to share with you. Actually, we've done this in conjunction with Amberjack, and you guys are the first to see this outcome, which is really, really exciting, if a little dark. So keep your questions coming throughout on the research, but also think of the questions you really want to ask our youth panel on what they're really looking for from their early careers journeys, and indeed how we can be more inclusive, diverse, and equal in their process for it. Let me dive into the discrimination research. So at SOS Media, we are an insight company. We've been supporting Amberjack to really help us understand as they support companies with their early careers programs. We wanted to understand discrimination in what young people are really facing at school, and then as they look towards apprenticeship, degree apprenticeship routes, what their expectations are of discrimination in process and in the workplace. The results are a little terrifying and quite different to the ones that you guys just put on our Menti. So at a summary level, we can see that 35% of UK teens are saying that they are currently being discriminated against at school. They're expecting in their future pathway of university, 32% are expecting to be discriminated against, but the greatest amount of predicted discrimination is in the job interview application process for early careers, with workplace coming shortly behind of continuing to be a place of discrimination. Now, the real challenge here for me is, of course, this is a legacy of discrimination. Young people are experiencing this in school or college every week, and it's leading to this forecasting future of expecting to continue to be discriminated against throughout their experience, through further education, higher, and into the workplace. And some quite dark figures to think that of the 3.16 million young people that we have that are 14 to 19-year-old, that over 1 million of them are facing discrimination every single week from the research that we've been able to put together. If I drill into that in a little bit more detail, what we can see is if we break this down and look at different gender, ethnicity, free school meals, the home living situation, health conditions, and sexuality, we can see there is some quite a bit of variance here. So dark purple is over gearing, statistically significant, the lighter purple being much lighter. So we can see that one of the largest areas of discrimination is actually mental health conditions within school or college, with 65% of those young people that are feeling discriminated against charting that it's mental health conditions that they're being discriminated for. We can see that with university pathways, it's the Black ethnicity group that are participating to be the most discriminated against others. But really dangerously, within the workplace, it is the Asian and Black communities that are expecting to be discriminated against more than double those of the white ethnicity group. Now, I know for those that are attending on the line, this may not be that shocking, the statistics, which is shocking in its own right, but there's some really challenging communities here that we need to make sure that we're focusing on to ensure they're not receiving discrimination as they predict it going through their experience. If we zoom in on this, so thinking about those that are being discriminated at school today, we can see that 66% of them are getting it from other young people their age, but really frighteningly, 53% of that million young people across the UK are getting it from teachers or education staff. Again, frighteningly, it's 1.4 incidents a week that's coming from teaching or staff, 2.7 coming from other young people. The greatest discrimination grounds are ethnicity at 47%. But you can see how that really does impact other different communities that are being marginalized and discriminated against as we go down that list. Really frighteningly, if I'm not frightening enough, let me really lean in. We asked young people how this affects their day. You know, if they're in education, they're trying their hard to learn, trying their hardest to learn, how does this impact studies? And what we found was that 4.9 was the rating of having their day totally wiped out after a discrimination event, whether it was from staff or from a student. You know, these are really terrifying statistics of obviously a clearly unequal society. Now, if we fast forward that to look at the same statistics, but about those same young people predicting future forwards, what's really interesting about the 39% that are expecting to be discriminated against is 2/3 of that is made up of people who are currently being discriminated against in school. But 1/3 of it is made up of young people who are not facing discrimination at school, but are expecting to be discriminated against within a job interview scenario. Again, this is job interview, but this is absolutely about their onboarding and recruitment journeys. Again, you can see that the key areas of discrimination expected by these young peoples are centered around ethnic identity, religion, gender identity moves up quite significantly. Even sexual orientation at 22% is a huge proportion of those that declare an LGBTQ plus sexuality. Again, some extra facts on here for you. The confidence that young people have to manage a discrimination event, i.e. call it out, seek support, ensure that they are contributing towards solutions, is quite low. We actually found that over 50% were under a 30% confidence range. So again, it's a real balanced picture of those that are willing to challenge and those that are unwilling. They believe that that at a 7.0 rating, young people believe that their characteristics influence your recruitment process. So again, going back to our initial poll of you guys, there's a real disparateness in that we had a 2.1 rating from you guys and a 7 rating from young people. So we've got to work together to try and close that gap and ensure that there isn't a misperception from young people about discrimination through that procedure. Now, we asked young people what they want to do, like what do they want employers to take? And again, we've got some qualitative quotes on screen here in order to show advice from young people on what you can do differently. Some things that really surprised me were focused around policies, actually, talking to diversity and inclusion policies at the point of application. Young people came back in their droves to say that's one thing they really want to see, they feel the values of an organization as they're going through the experience where they feel welcomed and included. So looking at this same chart again, but about discrimination in the workplace. So again, a young person's expectation of future workplace discrimination, again, 32% expecting to be discriminated against. And again, it was 2/3 that are currently facing discrimination within school, 1/3 that are expecting to get it when they don't face it today. Now, if this doesn't really shake you in your boots like it did me, they're expecting to be discriminated against 2.9 times a week by their manager and 3 3.1 times a week from another colleague. That's a lot of incidents of discrimination that young people are forecasting in their future when they hit your workplace. And again, you can see it's ethnic identity, gender identity comes right up here at 47%. Religion, sexual orientation also increasing from the interview process. Again, we asked what the confidence level was to manage that situation. And again, it's relatively low, but they believe that it's a really high influence that their characteristics are going to be judged in the workplace. Again, some actions came from our research that young people really wanted to see from you in order to make sure they felt included in the workplace. Guys, there's some really challenging and harsh statistics for a lunchtime on that chart, but I would love to get your thoughts on this. So again, telephone keypads, please. Give me 3 words that would describe how you feel after hearing that research. Again, if you've just joined us or if you've dropped out, pop to menti.com and just pop in that 8-digit code, and then pop in those 3 words that you think that describe how you feel having heard that research. They could be emotions, they could be just ways in which reflections that you have, but I'd love to get your thoughts. What 3 words would you use to describe how you feel after seeing that research? While I wait for those to come in, because I can see many of you are typing, we've done this research over the last 4 weeks, and over 5,600 young people have been a part of that research analysis from across every part of the UK. So, you know, this is a really representative group of the youth population and how they foresee inclusivity. Unless anyone can tell me otherwise, and I would genuinely be delighted to hear it if you pop it in as a question. You know, there's no other research that we've seen out there like this, where we've really asked young people to lean in and share their stories of how they feel within their current education environments and how they're forecasting their future as they move through your pipeline. As we can all see, you know, your words are kind of bringing up on screen here in a really dynamic and quite dark word cloud. You know, sad, disappointed, shocked. You know, great that some of you are kind of wanting to make a change or kind of see a kind of call to action in this, which, you know, absolutely Amberjack and SFS Media, that's the reason why we're here, to help make sure we can have a difficult conversation, but do better as a sector to make sure we're delivering a difference for young people. So thank you for those contributions, everyone. I want to go back to our live panel. That was the first time they've seen this research, and I'm really interested to get their reactions. Orpa, let me come to you first. What are your thoughts having listened to that research from me a moment ago?
I guess I could say I'm disappointed, but not really surprised.
Mm-hmm.
As myself, I've experienced discrimination in school. And I've also been worried about discrimination during an employment process, because I have applied to jobs and I have been looking at apprenticeships and being interviewed. And it's that build up of when you've been discriminated in school, you just kind of expect it to follow you throughout life. So then it builds this anxiety, and you just it kind of manifests in yourself, and you're just kind of like, well, this is going to happen now. I'm not going to be treated fairly, and it just, yeah, it's disappointing, really.
I totally hear you. You're getting me emotional already, but thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate your openness. Do you mind telling us a little bit more, and if you feel comfortable, about what kind of discrimination you experience at school and what you expect through the recruitment process?
So throughout my life, I've been to quite middle class schools. So I've been mostly surrounded by, I'll be honest, white middle class peers, and I'm not white, and I come from a working class background. So there's this disparity between me and my peers. And I've experienced throughout my younger years, there'll be situations where I'd kind of come into heat with a peer, like a white middle class peer, and I could tell that my teacher would prefer the opinion of my white middle class peer over mine, just because there was this prejudice and pronotion that I was more angry or I was more prone to cause trouble simply because of who I was, and that affected me throughout my school life, because it meant I couldn't stand up for myself in certain situations. It meant that I lost confidence in certain situations, especially let's say in competition, in situations where you'd be working with and against your peers in certain situations. It knocks down your ability to actually do something, and it's quite disheartening. And then once you leave school and you start looking at jobs and stuff, you feel, well, I can't compete because I'm going against white middle class competitors. And because I have that history, I'm like, oh, it's going to happen again. Like, it's destined to happen again.
I totally hear you, Orpa. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it, and I know that our attendees will be resonating with the words that you're saying. A quick note to attendees: please do pop your questions just up in the Menti panel. Just add them in as you go. I'll make sure I pick them up as we go through. Ewan, let me come to you next. You know, following that research, what does that mean to you?
Similar to what Orpa said, I'm not particularly surprised, to be honest. With schools, I think particularly mine being it's not a private school, but I would say they sort of strive to be you know, a fairly, you know, middle class school, lots of values and things like that. But although those are sort of promoted, I feel like similar to a lot of workplaces, you have values and things, but a lot of students don't necessarily respect that. I think sort of being a white heterosexual male, I don't think I really I wouldn't say I technically identify as part of a, you know, an ethnic minority or anything, or that puts me into a separate category that might be open to discrimination. But I know with the recruitment process in certain jobs, I've previously and have existing mental health issues, and the thought of putting those into a job application or letting an employer know when I'm in that sort of recruitment process, I find it particularly sort of unnerving, unsettling, and I feel like it would put me at a disadvantage to other people, so I've never ever included that. Also, I have faced discrimination at school. Only really one incident, and in a workplace, but I feel like that's more down to my age, particularly in the workplace. After actually disclosing to one of my colleagues about a mental health condition that I had, I actually faced discrimination after sharing that, and I was bullied for about sort of 3 or 4 months after that, until I eventually felt like I could speak to my line manager about it. But it actually drove me to the point where I was going to hand in my notice, and my line manager convinced me not to, and that he would sort it. So I think the way that it was dealt with was good, but I didn't feel like even after it was dealt with, the solution wasn't solved, and that's sort of, I would say, my summarized experience.
I hear you, and again, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate your openness to help our attendees understand what it's like from your experience. That sounds absolutely traumatizing, not only to have discrimination events around mental health, but you mentioned that you kind of sat with it for 3 or 4 months before you felt you could bring it up with your line manager. I can see a question that's come through already that I just want to pop straight in on that one. So
yeah.
What would you want to see from a future employer from your apprenticeship route to give you confidence that you could disclose a mental health condition during the recruitment process?
I think potentially I would say I don't think I've ever came across, I think I would say in some job applications and things, you do have the ability to put an existing mental health condition or something in there. I would say potentially the wording of the question. So instead of, do you have, you know, select from the box below or something, what mental health condition do you have? I think a good way to word it would be something like, we urge you to disclose any mental health condition that you're currently experiencing, and we will do our best to not necessarily sort of work with you, but I think just giving you that reassurance, even if it's rewording the question, just to make you feel kind of included, if you feel as though you can, to make you feel as though you can, you know, put whatever mental health condition you're experiencing at the time of applying.
That is a really practical step that our employers can take. Thank you, Ewan. I appreciate your openness. Chisholm, let me come to you. We've already had a couple of thoughts already, but I'd love to get your reaction to that research.
I think, again, it is expected. So as much as it is disappointing to see, you know, I feel like it is something that I expected to see, because I think it's more of like people don't realize it as much, or they try to discriminate in a way that's not so obvious, which I think at times can be more harmful because it puts a person who is receiving that discrimination in such an awkward position where they sort of feel like they might be overreacting or like they're reading into something too much. And even me, I feel like growing up, being a Black woman, I'm also neurodivergent. And even recently, I was speaking to teachers about issues I had, and I felt as if my problem was being downplayed almost, which in itself isn't that harmful. But when you're having multiple people doing that, it makes you feel like, oh, am I just overreacting? Am I just thinking into things too much? And I think we need to have a culture where people are more accepting of others, which is kind of unattainable at this moment, as we've seen. But yeah, as I said, I was kind of expecting it, so it wasn't that shocking to see.
Again, it's a dark lunchtime recording, but a really important important live panel to have this conversation. Thank you, Chisholm, for sharing that. You mentioned neurodivergence, and again, thank you for being open. Did you feel as though that your education establishment understood your neurodivergence, and would you expect an employer to understand and accommodate your neurodivergence?
I feel like not really. Speaking to teachers, like trying to explain how it affects me day to day, it kind of felt as if they thought I was just making up excuses for not being able to get top marks or not being able to, you know, do the best work for hours on end. And it's that culture of, because I go to a grammar school as well, so it's kind of that culture of everyone is meant to be sort of perfect, top of the class. And of course, like being neurodivergent, that puts me at a disadvantage compared to everyone else. And my efforts don't reflect as well as other people. So it just makes it seem like I'm being lazy or I'm not putting in as much effort, which isn't true. And even when you try to explain it in a grammar school, teachers sort of expect everyone to understand straight away. Teachers expect everyone to just get what they're doing and go with it. So
Do you
I
think
felt
an
that,
employer would, sorry, Chisholm, do you think you would expect the same from an employer?
I think I would. I feel like neurodivergence, especially in people of color, is very underrepresented. It's not something that's really spoken about, and people don't talk about how much more it can affect people of color, especially because the healthcare system can often be less lenient to us, because in the past it has been more focused towards helping white people, because Black people and other people of color haven't really been given that chance to be heard and listened to properly.
I totally hear you. Thank you, Chisholm. We're going to get more questions. For our attendees, I'm just going to step back in our slide deck just to make sure I can bring my instructions back up on screen. So if you've dropped out for any reason, again, just give a little scan of the QR code. You can upload your questions at any time. As you can see, I'm already picking up a couple, but keep your questions coming in terms of what you really want to get from our fantastic panel. Javier, let me pop to you next. What are your reflections and reactions to the research?
I'm not really that surprised, to be honest, because even though I probably haven't been discriminated as much as everyone else on this panel has, later on in life, I'm just kind of expecting it because like, as I sort of travel to other places, everyone else is going to have like different views, so they're probably going to judge me more harshly. And so even though I haven't yet experienced any discrimination as harsh as everyone else, I'm just sort of, I think that later on in life, I'm definitely going to experience it at some point.
I really appreciate you sharing that, Javier. As we saw from the research, 2/3 of people who were expecting to be discriminated against in their recruitment process or in the workplace were those that are discriminated against today. But 1/3, it sounds like you're representative of, that maybe isn't experiencing discrimination in the education environment, but is still expecting it in future, which is really terrifying. Thank you for sharing that, Javier. Zoya, let's come to you last. What were your thoughts on this research?
I agree with everyone so far that it wasn't really surprising. It was really upsetting, but it wasn't really surprising because a lot of young people would have anticipated that. And I think for ethnic minorities, a lot of people from those like marginalized communities, they find that sometimes the discrimination is subconscious. So even if a workplace educates their employers on what not to do or how to like recruit people, they'll obviously they might have their subconscious bias. So I think a good thing for employers to maybe implement would be blind applications, because I found that those applications work a lot better for me, because sometimes I'm worried that people will see my name and they'll decide like something subconsciously like to prefer someone else.
Yeah, I mean, even focusing on your name, as you say, there can be a lot of implicit bias. We do measurement with Amberjack on that to make sure we can almost make them blind applications as much as possible to ensure that we can limit, but inevitably it does impact a recruiter's process, or often can. Let me bring up one of our questions from our audience. What can employers do to reassure candidates that they aren't being discriminated against during the application process? Ewan, let me come to you on this one. How would you answer this question?
Personally, I think there are probably a few different ways. I think we have already been over in the previous meeting we had last week. I think that definitely one thing employers can do is, I understand I personally wouldn't expect it from a high, like a job which has received high volumes of applications, but I applied to be a sales assistant at a firm, and obviously I applied on Glassdoor, and obviously a lot more of these job application websites are becoming more and more, I would say, like open and advanced with the people who are applying for these jobs. So for me, it told me, I think I was up against 12 other people, I think. And I would assume, I don't know, anywhere from maybe 3 to 6 people might have been shortlisted for an interview. And I was just told, due to the sheer number of applicants, they couldn't provide any feedback at all on why I was rejected. And I've actually applied for that job previously, and I knew from really only 12 people applying, even if it was only a few lines or a couple of lines, or just one specific reason, for example, due to me being at school, I expect that I'll probably be rejected because I can't work weekdays. It would still be useful to know that going forward into a job. But
that sounds like almost the solution there for an employer would be even clearer in the job spec. So before you apply, they're being really specific about the conditions around that. That's really, really helpful advice, Ewan. Chisholm, let me come to you on this one. I feel like I want to get your voice. What do you think employers can do to reassure candidates they aren't being discriminated against during an apprenticeship application process?
I think to do this, there needs to be, okay. So with, like you and you're saying, like sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable to disclose any sort of issues, or I don't know, like your preferred gender or something like that, it might be not embarrassing, but it might feel sort of like uncomfortable to do so. So I feel like to do that, it's would be better if it's more of like an optional thing, just so people understand that applying for this apprenticeship or this job or whatever, this fully is your option. It's your choice to do whatever you want to do. And just, I think it's just about making people feel comfortable, because at the end of the day, if people are comfortable doing whatever they're doing, they're going to feel better about it. And then once people have applied to it, then there could be more of a comforting process, I suppose, just ensuring people, this is what we've done in the past, this is what we're doing now, and this is what we're hoping to do. And then giving people the option to put in their opinion as well, just so they feel like they're actually affecting the process.
I completely agree, Chisholm. Let me a quick poll, guys, because you're all on camera. So by show of hands, just actually with your physical hand, just leaning into Ewan's point that Chisholm's really amplifying here. Would you lie or withhold information about one of your characteristics in a job application process for fear that you would be discriminated against? That's 4 out of 5 of you. That's 5 out of 5 of you. That's all of you. Zoya's Wi-Fi playing up again. That's absolutely cool. Thank you. That's really, really interesting to know, and I can't imagine that you're alone in that. Let me bring up another question that's come up actually while we've been answering that one, which is one of our employers really wants to know, what can employers do before you even apply to make it give you reassurance around those factors? Javier, let me come to you on this one. What would you want to see from an employer before you even considered applying to make sure you felt that they were an inclusive place?
I think one thing that employers can do is probably, leading off of everyone else's point, like promise to give feedback, as in like actual detailed ones, instead of saying like really vague or specific sort of reasons why I didn't get in. Because, sorry, I'm just trying to gather my thoughts here.
That's okay, don't worry.
My mind's gone blank. Can you just come back to me later?
I absolutely will, Javier. There's no problem at all. Thank you. Orpa, what do you think to this one? What could employers do before candidates even apply to kind of reassure that they're an inclusive place?
So previously, when I have applied to jobs and apprenticeships, they sometimes have like a disclaimer sort of thing, where they're like, we as a company ensure that we have a fair hiring process and we do not discriminate anyone based on their gender, gender identity, religion, blah, blah. Like the list of things that people typically get discriminated against on. It's nice to have that disclaimer, because even though it's just a couple words that you can print out or type out on your website, it can sometimes give that reassurance. Well, if they're trying, I have the chance, if you get what I mean. Yeah.
Where would you want to see that as well? Because I think that's really important. Where would you want to see that? Is that just sort of on the employer's website when you're looking at apprenticeship programs? Is it on the job specification? Is it in kind of communications they might have with you around your job process? Like, where would you want to see that information?
I think all three of those places, if anything, like just to constantly reassure, because sometimes there can be that anxiety and you just feel like, oh well, and they've just said it because it looks, it like gives them sorry, let me gather my thoughts.
It's okay.
They've just put it once because it's something they have to do, because it's like a UK legal thing, like you legally have to put it. But if you constantly reassure your candidate, like, we do have a fair hiring process, we do not discriminate, do not worry if you disclose anything, that you are less likely to be selected for the role. If you constantly reassure that your candidate, they have more confidence and they're more likely to show their better skills, so then you can see how good of a candidate they are, if you understand what I mean.
I really do. Thank you for that, Orpa. Javier, let me come back to you if you're willing.
Yeah, I can. So I think, yeah, back to what I said, like just giving people feedback when they don't get the place, because I remember applying to one place for an apprenticeship, and I got rejected at one of the really early stages, even though every other place I'd applied for I'd actually gotten through to like the further stages. And when I got told that I'm not being accepted onto the next stage, they also said, because they have high volumes of applications, that they won't be able to provide me feedback. And I feel like that's a bit of a lie, because the applications probably just opened like less than a month ago. So I know that they're not getting as high volume of applications. And I think that just shows me that the company doesn't really care a lot about giving their applicants feedback.
It's a really important point, Harvey. I feel like I can hear all the voices of the attendees on the line, kind of sharing that it's something they really struggle to have resourcing for, but also this can sometimes be a concern of saying the wrong thing. So, saying nothing means that they, are a little bit more defensible. What I would say to our attendees, regardless of your thoughts, is, of course, our live youth panel here are here to share their perception of reality. So this is how our young people feel, and I know that many more behind them feel exactly the same. Ewan, what are your thoughts on this question?
I think Orpa and Javier made really good points there, to be honest. Just had a couple of quick things I think I should add. I feel like I've noticed that, I'm not sure if it's since the sort of COVID-19 pandemic, but similar when you're calling up for, say, customer support or something, and you're getting told due to, I don't know, the COVID-19 circumstance, which happened, 2 years ago now, over 2 years ago, that they're short-staffed and everything. And I feel like a lot of companies, I noticed, just seem to hide behind this sort of almost invisible barrier of saying, due to this, we can't do this. So as an example there, due to a high number of applicants, and it almost just seems like it's this sort of automatic response you get. And I feel like it's sort of some sort of shield a lot of companies, I feel, use just so they can't provide you with feedback. And as Javier said, it's likely that if the application's open not very long ago, then it's very unlikely that they've received that many, and it just seems to be this sort of invisible thing that a lot of companies can do to just as an excuse and a let out of not needing to provide feedback. And I think similar to what Orpa said about like being feeling included before the actual process, I know a lot of companies, say for example, they changed their logos during Pride Month and things like that. And I think that it would be great to have, because obviously I learn in business studies, which is what I'm studying at the moment, that companies have mission statements and things. I feel as though, I think if they want to make people feel more included when they're applying, I think they should have something similar to a mission statement about what their values are on diversity and inclusion. And I think that should be on the job description, personally.
I really value that. I want to kind of carry that into another question, actually. Zoria, I'm going to ask you this question. One thing that often tickles me a little bit is that in order to be seen as inclusive, a lot of employers will put visibly ethnically diverse imagery of people within their websites, within their job applications, etc. They will kind of lean into taking a box for diversity and inclusion with kind of ethnic, a variety of ethnic identities. Have you noticed that, and how would you feel about that?
I think I have noticed it for some companies, and I've noticed that sometimes it seems like they're actually sincere about wanting to represent people, and sometimes it just feels forced and like they're only doing it to look good. So even though this isn't related to this question, really, I think I'd want to see what everyone else said, like them actually acting towards being more diverse, so that you could tell that they're being sincere about everything and wanting to represent people. And also for the last question, like maybe if they had like blind applications or just any disclaimers or anything like that, I'd actually believe it. But if it was just really forced and there was nothing to go along with that, then I probably wouldn't believe that.
There's some really interesting actions that you're bringing up there, Zoe, which again, I think are well worth kind of taking note of from our attendees. So things like, you know, being clear about the steps that have been taken in the recruitment process to ensure that discrimination is out. Because I'm picking up on Orpa's words, that kind of disclaimer, that like boilerplate that we get, that, you know, we don't discriminate, you know, might feel a little, from what you said, Orpa, like a little bit insincere at times, or the tonality of it feels a bit like, oh, we have to put that there because it feels kind of legal. Tying that with your point, Zoe, I wonder if there's a way in which our employers could better be more open earlier on in terms of, we take these steps to ensure that we're being the most inclusive at every stage. It sounds as though that's a really clear action you're pulling out. Chisholm, let me come to you on that, because I've heard you speak before in one of our videos that we put together, and you spoke with such passion about visualization of diversity and inclusion. What would you want to see very tangibly from an employer in order to go, that is an inclusive workplace?
I feel like putting together a team of people who are genuinely passionate about a topic and kind of having them as a representation of the company would be really good, because when things are just put out during a certain month or during a certain day, it can come across as very performative. But matter of fact, we need to be doing these things throughout the year all the time. So if there are people who are delegated to certain groups representing certain people, so that before people even apply to jobs, just looking at the website, they can see that there's a group of people who are genuinely passionate about ensuring that everyone feels comfortable and welcomed, would be a really good thing to do.
I love that. Would those people be current employees that are kind of sharing their story on video? Would it just be imagery of other people? Is that the kind of things you're talking to?
I feel like videos of current employees, because a picture doesn't really show much, but genuinely hearing what people have to say is so much more impactful.
I love that. I've got another great question that's come up from our audience. Javier, I'm going to come to you with this one. Just picking up on this same thread, if an employer has an equality, diversity and inclusion policy, would and they shared that with you as part of their recruitment process, would it give you more confidence that they were a more inclusive place to be?
Yeah, I think it would, because obviously during the recruitment process, I'm usually a bit worried about getting rejected and like maybe it not being for the right reasons. So I think having a policy there to show that that you won't be rejected from applications due to anything wrong, like your age or your race, would be quite nice to see, and it would.
I get that. I say that as a prequel to this question that came in, which I love. So if an employer wanted to share that information about that policy, where would they need to share it in order for you to see it? Javier, let me come back to you on that one.
I think I'd want to see it in like in the job description and like in the early careers section of an employer's page. And like it should have like sort of the main points coming from the policies.
I love that. Thank you so much. Okay, great. Next question. Excuse me. Orpa, I'm going to come to you with this one, because this one feels like really emotionally charged in a really lovely way. So it sounds like there are some fundamental trust issues between young people and organizations. What do the panel feel that organizations can do to increase trust generally? Lovely question. Thank you, audience. Orpa, what are your thoughts on this one? Oh, you're just on mute, Orpa.
Sorry about that. So I think the best thing to do would obviously to show candidates and possible employees that, you know, once again, disclaimers and showing diversity as well, you know, visually, once again, and trying to make it not seem forced, like not in a weird, like we're diverse, we do everything kind of thing, but more so we genuinely do just employ anyone regardless of their race and whatever, and we employ people based on their skill, not on the way they look or the way they act. And I think having something internal of like teaching or existing employers and sorry, I've forgotten the word for people who hire people, but showing them, you know, teaching them not to discriminate, like have prejudice, and trying to dismantle that before they look at employees.
I love that, mainly because if I can just pick up on that last point, because it's really powerful. Most organizations, I think I would be fair to say, I mean, attendees keep me right here. I don't want to talk out of school, but most organizations would put their managers, which is who you're referring to, Orpa, through equality, diversity, and inclusion training. It's often a legal requirement. It's usually part of onboarding, and you know, HR, human resource teams work really hard to try and ensure there's equality across their organization. But I must say, I haven't seen very many organizations talk about that at the apprenticeship recruitment stage, that we put those practices into the workplace to try and give reassurance even before the application point. It sounds like what you're saying, Oprah, is that would help develop that trust if you knew that they had those kind of practices, training, and principles in place.
Yeah, instead of making it seem like some redundant legal requirement, like, oh, we put everyone through diversity training because it's required. It's more so you have to have an active, it has to be active. You have to anti-discrimination. You have to actively do it to show like possible candidates that they won't be discriminated against. And once again, building their confidence. And that way they can show you that they're a good candidate because they're not anxious and worried that they're going to be discriminated against.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you. Ewan, I've got another one for you, which again, this is getting juicy now, guys. Would it help to share the demographic of the existing employer's workforce? So for instance, for your specific area of concern for discrimination, you mentioned very kindly about mental health conditions. If you knew that apprenticeship employee that you were applying to had 39% of their employees had a mental health condition that was being supported in the workplace, would that help you feel you more likely to apply?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point, to be honest. I feel as though it's quite obvious to me that a lot of people feel as though they're part of the like if you're part of an ethnic minority, that being not being part of the majority makes it so you feel you can't apply to a job. If you feel, even if it's, say, like you said, 39% of people, that still feels like a fairly large majority. And I think the vast majority of people these days, you know, do seem to have mental health issues, you know, even if however minor or major they are. And I think, yeah, definitely showing the demographics, it might just makes you feel like you're not alone. Like when other people talk about it, it definitely just gives you that sense you're not alone in that. And I feel like if a company can show you what they are doing, I know after telling my line manager about my mental health issues, all I was told was that I could go to like a doctor's appointment during work, but that was about the only sort of thing they could offer to support me, despite sort of mentioning things that I was experiencing at the time, like active thoughts of suicide and self-harm and all those things, you know, quite fairly kind of, I'd say, moderate, you know, or severe effects of depression and things. I definitely think if an employer can really be loud and clear about what they have to offer, even if they have, you know, counselors and things to speak to, like I have at school, I think that could make a really huge difference to you know, even the turnover of staff. I know probably a lot of people might leave due to mental health issues, and I feel like, yeah, it could definitely help the company, not just people who are applying.
I think that's another great solution that we can offer. You know, what are the services available to support inclusivity in the workplace, but share those, you know, prior to the point of application. So again, you've got comfort in being there. Chisholm, let me come to you on this question as well, because again, I feel like I really want to get your voice here. Would it help to share the demographic of employers, the employers existing in current workforce? And again, I referenced that from ethnicity, gender, neurodivergence, physical disability. You know, would that give you comfort?
I think definitely, like, people want to be surrounded by other people who are like them to feel more comfortable. I know even when I'm like looking at universities, I often like search up how many Black students there are, just so you know you're not the only person there, because you want to feel comfortable wherever you're working, wherever you're going. So I feel like sharing that information would be really helpful, because it just allows people to know that if anything, there are people they can relate to wherever they are.
Couldn't agree more. Panel, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank all 5 of you for being so open and sharing your viewpoints from your own perspective and that you've seen on the ground. We can't hear it, but there's a thunderous applause from our attendees for being it's just so amazing and being so open and valued to this time. I'm going to close up with a couple final thoughts. So first one is, a big thank you to Amberjack for helping this, bring this panel together for you. I think, you know, whilst quite a dark conversation, one that's absolutely needed in ensuring that we're able to listen to the youth voice. You know, you see our research, you know, it's a huge proportion of young people that you're inheriting into your early career pathways that come with a legacy of discrimination events that they've had themselves, or certainly that they're expecting you to have discriminated against them. Our panel have come up with loads of different micro actions we can take in order to show that we are more inclusive environments. Certainly the team at Amberjack are on hands to help you with that as specialists within the early recruitment and early career process. SOS Media, of course, are here on hand with our research. We'll ensure that the slides and the research are with you following this event to make sure you can utilize anything that you've seen from the exclusive launch of these results today. Do look out for our future Brutal Truth series, as we've got more really important and valued conversations coming up from our webinar series. For now, I'll say a big thank you for all of your questions. Thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Wave goodbye, panel. Bye, panel. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Thank you.